hockey fans, and welcome to part 2 in our 4-part series at the look at the great career of Joe Nieuwendyk. In part 1, we covered his early origins, how he was overlooked by the OHL and went to play for Cornell University and became a superstar there. However, NHL scouts were still overlooking him. Also, Joe was a star lacrosse player in his early days as well. And then, of course, the Calgary Flames made a blockbuster trade on draft day when they traded Kent Nilsson to the Minnesota North Stars for draft picks, and one of them was a second-round draft pick, and that was Joe Nieuwendyk. Calgary media laughed at the whole thing, sacrificing Nilsson for quote-unquote Joe who? Well, the Calgary Flames added Nieuwendyk to the roster in the late 86-87 season, and he also played in the playoffs. He showed a lot of spark and was added to the main roster in the 87-88 season in his first official rookie year. And he had one of the greatest rookie years in NHL history. He became only the second rookie to score 50 goals, totaling 51 overall, had 92 points, led the entire league in power play goals, and, of course, won the Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie. In his second season, things would just get even better. Another 50-goal season. And, oh yes, he won the Stanley Cup as a member of an awesome Calgary Flames team in 1989. And his performance in series-clinching games and on the power play were superb. And also in the regular season that year, led the league in game-winning goals. In his third season in the 89-90, well, many thought a Flames dynasty was coming to fruition, but it was not to be. Despite this, however, Joe set career highs with assists with 50 and overall points with 95, and still had a great 45-goal total. The Calgary Flames, however, were shockingly upset in the first round and played very poorly against an underdog Los Angeles Kings team. Be that as it may, the Flames dynasty may have been derailed, or maybe it's just on the back burner for now. Now, the career of our hero in Calgary continues here in part 2. As Joe Nieuwendyk is about to enter his 4th season in the NHL, he is already seen as a guy that almost any NHL team would want to have. The way he's developed himself as one of the best all-around goal scorers in the league is one thing, but his maturity and determination was also something that many felt could benefit their given team. But he belonged to the city of Calgary, and the fans there definitely felt that. He had become a hero in their eyes. But after their disastrous playoff exit in 1990, changes were coming. Despite having 2 years left on his contract, Terry Crisp was finally out as head coach. Fletcher had enough of him, Cliff Fletcher that is, the Flames GM of many years, and quite frankly so did many of the players. And many felt that his weaknesses were heavily exposed in the playoffs, and that's why the Flames were beaten so easily. Also, Joe Mullen, after his disastrous playoff outing and a somewhat lackluster regular season, albeit not bad, and again was felt that he was quote-unquote too old for this team, and Cliff Fletcher sent him to Pittsburgh. That's a huge loss, however. Another big loss would be the departure of Brad McCrimmon, a defenseman who was among the NHL leaders in plus-minus throughout his career, heading to Detroit. However, hopefully new head coach and former Flames player Doug Risebrough can utilize the quote-unquote Flames Force 5 of Joe Nieuwendyk, Sergei Makarov, Gary Roberts, Gary Suter, and Al MacInnis. But how will our hero fare? Was last year just a temporary setback? Can the Flames get back on track? Well, the odds makers once again said the Calgary Flames are the top choice to win it all. Despite the changes on paper, they were still stacked. After all, stars like Theo Fleury had started to come along as well. The Flames' rotation as captain as an alternate captain, while a weird system, allowed our hero to start wearing the C on his jersey in certain games. Now let's find out what happens. Well, Joe was off to a great start once again this year. 8 goals, 10 assists for 18 points to begin the season in October. He was also a monster, plus 10. He had 2 goals against the Jets on October 8th, and in the very next game in a loss against the Red Wings, he had 2 goals and assists for 3 points. Also, he had 2 goals and 3 assists for 5 points in a win over Dynamo Dino and the Washington Capitals on October the 27th. The Flames were off to an excellent start as a whole. November, our hero continues to roll. 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 points, 13 games, and a huge plus 9. Pretty much keeping a fantastic pace, including a goal and 3 helpers against a struggling Flyers club for 4 points, a goal and 2 assists against rival Vancouver, and 2 goals both shorthanded against the Jets in a tie. However, the Flames began to struggle a little bit. Calgary was finding their groove again. Our hero's production slowed somewhat in December with 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points in 14 games. Not too bad at all, however, and still a solid plus 4. Had a 2-point night against the terrible Nordiques, as well as the Canucks. In January, the Flames were struggling, but Joe wasn't. He was doing everything he could to keep his team afloat, with 11 points in 12 games in January. 2 goals in a road win over former teammate Rob Ramage and Elise, and 2-point nights against the Jets and Sabres. February, however, was a different story. The Flames were again back to themselves, and our hero was helping lead the way, with 13 points in 12 games, including leading a comeback from a 2-0 deficit against rival Edmonton, with 2 goals and assists for 3 points. The Flames plowed through March, and our hero was at the forefront of it all. A goal and 2 assists for 3 points over the Stars, 2 goals against the powerful St. Louis Blues squad in a huge 8-4 win, 2 power play goals and a win over Pat LaFontaine and the Lily Islanders club. But as the season was winding down, they were in a tight battle for the division title with the yet again revamped Los Angeles Kings. A huge game on March 23rd with the Flames leading 1.95 over the Kings 94. It was an important game. Joe had 2 goals, but the Flames were beaten severely 8-4, and the Kings took the division lead and didn't look back. Overall, 10 goals, 7 assists for 17 points in 15 games this month. The Flames finished 46, 26, and 8, back at 100 points, but their streak of Smite Division titles ended after 3 seasons. But they made the playoffs, once again led the entire league in overall goals, and they were ready to shake off last year's woes, as now, it's playoff time! And here we go, the Battle of Alberta Part 5, as the Flames look to avenge that terrible 1988 loss against the defending Stanley Cup champion, the Edmonton Oilers. However, this was a very different Oilers team now. Cheapskate owner and all-around shady Peter Pocklington was creating a bad atmosphere. General Manager Glenn Sader was losing control of the wheel, many players were unhappy, and Yari Curry had enough and said bye-bye and went to Europe. Mark Messier was both miserable and injured, missing 27 games. Glenn Anderson, while still good, was a far cry from what he once was. Craig Simpson was inconsistent all year, but they did get a 40-goal season out of Peter Klima, and the pest, Esa Tikkanen, however, had an excellent year. Joe Murphy was a rising star, Martin Gelinas was a hard worker, and they had veteran leadership with Ken Linsman and Craig McTavish. Their defense was still led by veteran Kevin Lowe, however Charlie Huddy suffered a slew of injuries, Steve Smith provided tremendous toughness, and Craig Muni was still pretty reliable. But the question was, which goalie do they go with? Bill Ranford was brilliant the year prior, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP, but Grant Fuhr, on the other hand, was considered one of the greatest playoff goalies of all time. The Oilers were led by head coach John Buckler, and they were barely a 500 team. They finished with 80 points, 20 behind the Flames. But either way, the battle is on. Game 1, the Saddle Dome. The Battle of Alberta has the fans hungry for blood and wins. Fuhr gets the call for the Oilers, while the Flames, of course, rely on Mike Vernon. The Flames are pressing early and indeed take a 1-0 lead, but the Oilers tied it before the end of the first period. Fuhr, however, is a wall in net, and the Oilers seem to exhaust the Flames quite a bit and walk away with a 3-1 win. Our hero has a lackluster outing. Game 2, the Flames refocus and rebound, and it's the Mike Vernon show. He is amazing in net, sensational, stopping 35 shots, and the series is tied. The Flames take a 3-1 win themselves. However, Joe doesn't shine very much. We ship to Northlands Coliseum for Game 3, and the crowd is just as rabid as the Calgary faithful. And our hero has taken some media flack for how he has played in the first 2 games, but he's ready for this one. Power play! Robert Reichel to Al McInnes to Joe Nieuwendyk. Just 2:03 in, 1-0 Flames, but the Oilers tie it 11 seconds later. It's 1-1 after 1. The game was tied 2-2 in the second, and then Joe to Gary. It's a goal. The Flames lead 3-2 after 2. The Oilers tied it in the third again, however, and time was winding down, and it looked like we're headed to overtime, but with 14 seconds to play, Joe Murphy scores and gives the Oilers a shocking win. They take a 2-1 series lead. Here we go again. Game 4, our hero is looking to step up again and does just that. A goal! Just 44 seconds in from his pal Gary Roberts, and the Flames lead 2-0 after 1. But the Oilers led 3-2 after 2 and went on to win 5-2 as Grant Fuhr again stymied the Flames. A lot of flack being thrown towards the Flames' big guns, especially Fleury, for a lack of production, as well as Al McInnes. Yet again, the Flames are on the verge of being eliminated again by a team they were much better than again. Something has to give. Game 5, the Flames have life back at home and take a 2-0 lead. But again, they let it slip. It's tied 2-2 after 1. The Flames, however, regained their 2-goal lead. It's 4-2. Let's cut to 4-3 to end the second period. The time is winding down, and the Oilers pull Fuhrer. They have an extra attacker, but McCowan works hard to get the puck out of the zone, as does Joel Otto, and eventually our hero puts it in the empty net. A monster 5-3 win for the Flames. They are still alive. Game 6, however, is back in Edmonton, and the Flames are still on the verge of being eliminated. The Oilers led 1-0 after one, but Ranheim tied it in the second. The third period was scoreless. The Flames went to town on Grant Fuhrer, but he again was playing like the man who backstopped them in the 4 Stanley Cups in the 80s. We're off to OT. In a very infamous moment, Theo Fleury, who had a very frustrating series, scores his first goal of the entire series, and his celebration afterwards is still talked about to this very day, and he has forced a Game 7 back in Calgary. This is playoff hockey. Game 7. The atmosphere is insane at the Saddle Dome. The Flames are frustrating the Oilers early with a Robert Reichel power play goal, as Edmonton continues to take dumb penalties, so another power play. Theo Gary Suter this time to Joe! Goal 2-0, and Fleury makes it 3-0, but the Oilers get one back. It's 3-1 after one. The Flames start to crumble as the Oilers manage to tie it in the second as Vernon is facing immense pressure, still making some big saves, however. Then the Oilers took a lead, 4-3. The Flames on a 3-goal lead slip. Ay. But with 2:10 left, little-used Ronnie Stern tied the game, saving the Flames season, and now we're off to another OT. And about 7 minutes in, as Tikkanen completes a hat trick, the Flames season is over. Not a great series for our hero, despite a couple good performances. Well, the Flames did play a lot better overall in this series than they did in the loss to the Kings the year prior. Their inability to protect a lead hurt them badly, and it seems they forgot they were facing a team that, despite their woes, had a ton of playoff experience still. Many criticisms were sent our hero's way, but he wasn't alone. Mike Vernon probably took the worst flack. He was taken to task by the media, and he didn't play overly well in the clutch. As were a few others, such as defenseman Frank Musial, who was seen as useless and a goon. It seems the losses of McCrimmon and Ramage over the years is affecting the Blue Line core when it comes to playoff hockey. The Oilers managed to upset the Kings in the next round, only to fall to the 27-win Minnesota North Stars in the Campbell Conference Final, pretty much ending Edmonton's glory days for good. And to add salt to their wounds, Joe Mullen hoisted the Stanley Cup once again, this time as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Nieuwendyk had another 45-goal season and added 40 assists for 85 points in 79 games. Another tremendous year, and still very much, of course, a major asset to this Flames club. Al MacInnis, as he has been all through Joe's career at this point, was the great setup man for him, and this time led all players assisting on his goals with 17, as the system with he and Suter backing up Joe was paying dividends. Once again, Makarov was a big factor being lined up with Joe, and our hero assisted on 14 of the 30 goals that Makarov scored that year, just one short of half. Meanwhile, Gary Roberts was still in a lot, as the two teamed up for 11 assists. However, Roberts saw a significant slip in offensive production, and at times Joe would be put together with Fleury, who was becoming among the NHL's best, as the two teamed up one way or another for 22 goals. Once again, Joe's presence on the power play was a major highlight, as nearly half of his goals, 22 to be exact, were tied for second best in the league with Rangers star Mike Gartner, as Brett Hull led the entire category. Either way, Joe once again led the Flames to the best power play in the league for the third time in 4 seasons, and was also tied for 7th in the league with shorthanded goals. Joe also managed to notch a vote for the Lady Byng Trophy again this year, tied for 13th overall in voting. But once again, playoff woes for the Flames continue, but Joe Nieuwendyk is still proving himself to be among the elite in the NHL, and the fans in Calgary still adore him, and with good reason. His passion for the game and his leadership skills continue to evolve. Tied for 2nd in power play goals, tied for 7th in shorthanded goals, a Lady Byng vote, and reached 45 goals for the 2nd straight year, and still averaging a point a game. But something has to give in Calgary after 2 straight first-round exits and major upsets. When you're one of the best teams in the league, losing to major underdogs, you gotta shake things up a little bit. Joe Nieuwendyk got some great news going into the 1991-92 season, as the Flames got rid of that rotating captaincy system and made our hero into the official team captain, something all of his teammates got behind. But he also got some bad news. Joe tried out for Team Canada for a chance to play in the 1991 Canada Cup that fall. We'll never know if he would have made the team or not, because he suffered a knee injury during training camp, which meant he was going to miss some time when the season actually began. And it was a new era in Calgary, because in a huge, shocking turn of events, General Manager Cliff Fletcher, the only GM in this team's entire history since their inception in Atlanta back in 1972, left the team after 19 years to take on the daunting task of rebuilding a long-suffering Toronto Maple Leafs club. It was a shock to many. And Doug Riseborough, who worked side by side with Fletcher for years, took on the job as general manager in addition to still coaching the club. Many felt Doug may have been taking on too much and was in over his head. Now our hero enters his 5th season with knee problems, which can change any given player no matter how good they are in any given sport, let alone hockey. The Flames were still given the 4th best odds to win the Cup. But he would return to action on October 30th, 1991, receiving a thunderous ovation from the Saddledome crowd. The Flames, however, would lose to the Devils, and Joe was a -1. And the Flames were off to just about a so-so start, I guess. Joe scored a goal, however, in the second game, a road win over the Jets, but then went into one of the biggest slumps of his career. 6 games without a point, was facing heavy scrutiny. Some suspected he came back too soon. But he slowly found his groove again, with 6 points in 3 straight games total to end in the month. Well, 2 assists in a loss to the revamped Canucks squad, a goal and a helper against the growing Jets team, and 2 more assists in a big win over the Kings. He had 8 points in 13 games and was a -3 to kick off his season. To begin December, our hero had a goal and a helper in a loss to a very good Red Wings club, and the Flames were very inconsistent and started losing several games. But Nieuwendyk was playing well. He had 2 assists in another loss against Detroit, but then had 3 points with a goal and 2 assists in a big win against the Kings, who were also struggling this season. But the Flames won 3 in a row to end the month, and Joe had 13 points in 13 games. But then former GM Cliff Fletcher played Riseborough like a fool in the new year. The Flames gave away Doug Gilmour, prospect Kent Manderville, who would win a silver medal for Team Canada the following month, reliable backup goaltender veteran Rick Wamsley, and further depleted their defensive core, giving up Rick Nattrass and Jamie McCown. That's some heavy talent they're parting with. Now, who did they get in return? Well, let's see. Gary Lehman, who had a few good seasons, was a former 50-goal scorer, but since sticking it to former teammates Eli Fraidy's wife, he hasn't quite been the same, and his best days are behind him. Glorified knuckle-dragger Craig Berube, Michel Petit, who was actually a decent defenseman, but maybe not quite as good as Jamie McCown or even Rick Nattrass at this point, and Alexander Gudjinik, a defensive prospect from the Ukraine. Hell, these 2 combined probably weren't as good as a lot of these defensemen that the Flames had. And oh, they need a backup goalie, Jeff Reese. Oh yeah, why not grab Peter Ing while you're at it? Oy. The Calgary media ate Riseborough alive for this, and so did the fans, and rightfully so. And moving on. Joe had an excellent January, once again averaging a point a game with 12 and 12. A huge +9, which included a 7-game point streak that saw the Flames go 4-2-1. He had 5 goals, 4 assists, and 9 points for a +8 in that stretch. But to end the month, the Flames began a 5-game losing streak that spilled into February, and after that streak, the Flames were 21, 24, and 7. It didn't help that Makarov had injury issues, and even Al McInnes and Gary Suter missed some action. And the Kings were tied with the Oilers for 49 points, the 4th and final playoff spot in the division. And this was unlike the Flames this time of year, in true danger of missing a playoff spot. In February, our hero was sharp, with 15 points in 13 games, 2 assists in a loss against a so-so Islanders team, and also had 2 more the very next game in a win over Quebec. And then on the 13th, 2 goals against the powerful Capitals in a tie, 2 assists in a win over the Bruins, a goal and assist in a win over the Kings, and then 2 assists in a loss to the Sabres. But the Flames still can't get on track. Going into the final month of the season, Doug Riseborough resigned as head coach to focus on being a general manager. Assistant Guy Charon took over for the remainder of the season. The Flames were 25, 29, and 9 for 59 points, and were sitting in 5th place, 2 points back of the final playoff spot held by the Jets. The Flames are the worst they have been in years. The Flames, however, could not get it together, and Joe went on an 8-game pointless streak. His only notable performance was the final game of the season, 2 goals in a tie with the Canucks, who won the Smythe Division that year. Just 8 points, 17 games, not even half a point a game for our hero, and the Calgary Flames finished 31, 37, and 12 for 74 points. And for the first time since 1975, and for the first time ever since their move to Calgary, Flames have missed the playoffs. Joe finished with 22 goals and 34 assists for 56 points in 69 games. Not a very good season, mainly due to how it started and how it finished, but was still one of the most consistent players on the team. And his line with Makarov and Roberts was still performing well despite Makarov missing 12 games himself. Assisted on 10 of Joe's goals, nearly half. 13 of Joe's assists were to Gary Roberts, who had a superb season of 53 goals and 90 points, leading the whole team. He and Makarov also collaborated on 9 assists together, but his work with McInnes and Suter were down a huge deal this year, which could have been a huge factor. It was the year that Joe Nieuwendyk and the Flames would rather forget, and to be clear, Joe didn't exactly play awful, it just was well below his standards, having career lows in goals and points, and for the first time in his career not averaging a point a game. He's missed the playoffs for the first time, but despite the Flames still having the best power play, he didn't rank in the top 10 for goals in that regard, or for game-winning goals in that matter. He finished with a minus for the first time in his career, but it was a mere -1. To be that as it may, change needs to come in Calgary, and now. The media didn't give Joe much of a free pass in the offseason. His leadership was team captain was called into question. There were a lot of people, however, who didn't question it. For one, fans in Calgary, and above all, his teammates. He had the heart of a true leader, and the C in his jersey wasn't just a fashion statement. He took it very seriously. But the fact is, there were problems in Calgary that couldn't be ignored anymore. Since they won the Stanley Cup, they've been defeated by underdog opponents in the opening round twice in a row, and missed the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. Something has to give, and to be fair, the Flames weren't a bad team, they just had a bad year. But of course that still means changes need to happen. Doug Riseborough was still the GM, and they had a new head coach, however, now in Dave King, who is best known for coaching Hockey Canada, as he had heavy international experience obtaining gold in junior hockey and bringing Canada home their first Olympic medal in over 30 years at the 1992 Winter Olympics in Albertville that had just passed. This was his first NHL job, however. But players such as our hero and Makarov need to stay healthy. They didn't make much changes player-wise, but the fear of McKinnis and Suter carrying this entire defense was pretty abundant. Their scouting was a mess. Fletcher left them in a heat that you really can't blame Riseborough for, as draft picks that weren't panning out. At the 1990 NHL entry draft, they traded their draft pick to New Jersey, and they used it to draft goaltender Trevor Kidd, as he was a hot prospect. And the Devils, however, used the pick that they traded down for to draft another goalie, Martin Brodeur. They had drafted goalie, the Flames that is, goaltender Jason Mazzotti back in 1988. He hasn't played a single game for the Flames yet at this point. Their first round pick in 1991 would only play 2 games for them, and their pick this year wasn't bad, as it was actually Corey Stillman, who went on to have a pretty good career. Well, the lack of changes has people skeptical. The league has now expanded to 24 teams, and the Flames have the 14th best odds of winning the Stanley Cup. Are their days done? What can Joe Nieuwendyk do all about this? Can he rebound from last year? Let's find out. In the second game of the year, on October 8, 1992, Joe had 2 goals against a sad-looking Oilers team. Speaking of sad, the sophomore San Jose Sharks took a beating from the Flames, Joe with a goal, and was a +3, and 2 helpers against the Stars on Halloween. He had 8 points in 12 games, and the Flames were actually out to a really good start. In November, our hero was really in the groove again. 9 goals, 6 assists for 15 points in 12 games, and he began the month with a bang, a huge hat-trick, his first in nearly 3 years, and it came in a huge win over their excellent division rivals, the Canucks. He also helped embarrass the 2 newest expansion clubs in the NHL, the Ottawa Senators, beating them 8-4. Our hero had 2 goals and an assist. On the 14th, the Tampa Bay Lightning were at least a little more competitive against the Flames, but the Flames still won 5-3. Nieuwendyk had 2 goals, including the game winner. The Flames experienced some struggles, but overall were doing pretty good. And Nieuwendyk continues to excel in December with 12 points in 13 games and a really good +5. And the Flames are tearing through the competition, losing just 1 game all month. Joe had 2 assists against a sluggish St. Louis Blues team, a goal and assist over former teammate Doug Gilmour and the Leafs, and 2 assists against Edmonton. And the Flames had a 3-point lead in first place in the Smythe division over Vancouver. But in January, it was a harsh reality check for our hero and the Flames. They struggled greatly, and he wasn't much of a factor, which is 5 each on goals and assists for 10 points in 14 games and was a -5. He had a goal and 2 assists and 3 points in a tie with rookie Eric Lindros and the Philadelphia Flyers, and 2 goals against red-hot Pat LaFontaine and the Sabres, with the Flames lost. They went through a horrendous 11-game winless streak, and the Canucks retook first place. But in February, they got going again, and so did Nieuwendyk. 12 points in 12 games, a huge +7. 2 helpers against Stevie Y and a very excellent Detroit Red Wings squad. 2 games later, 2 goals and an assist for 3 points against the pathetic sophomore Sharks. And 2 games later, again, this time against the Sharks once again, 2 assists. As for March, to quote a wise man, "Oh no, we suck again!" Only 4 wins in 12 games, 5 goals, 2 assists for 7 points, and a -4 for Joe. 2 goals in a win over the Canucks, and on top of that, he's missing 4 games to end March and begin April. The Flames, however, aren't in any real danger of missing the playoffs, however, as they can still catch the Canucks for first place, but the Kings are only a few points behind, catching them for second. Joe returns and the Flames finish the season strong, only losing 1 of their final 8 games, and he plays one of the best games of his entire career. Once again, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points against the Canucks, sending a huge message to their big rivals on April the 9th. This win puts the Flames only 2 points back of them for first. A monster 8-1 win to top it off. Joe is named first star of the game, those standing ovations and cheers of "Joe, Joe, Joe" are once again echoing through the dome. After returning from his 4-game absence in his final 6, he had 11 points in those games and finished the season hot. He was back to his old self, which is important because the Flames finished 43, 30, and 11 for 97 points, but sadly couldn't catch the Canucks for first, but it was still good enough for second. They get a huge chance to right the wrongs going forward as they rebounded from a disastrous season last year, and once again, it's playoff time. Awaiting them in the first round is the team that embarrassed them 3 years prior, the Los Angeles Kings, who have been flip-flopping since the Gretzky trade overall. They started off excellent, became mediocre, but still beat our hero and his team out of the playoffs. They got really good again, winning the Smythe Division. Then they were down to being a decent above-average club, and this year it's about the same. They finished with a winning record and had 88 points under rookie head coach Barry Melrose. Each team has won 3 games over the other and tied 1 this season. Wayne Gretzky missed nearly half the season due to severe back issues, but he returned and was pretty productive. Luc Robitaille had a career year, and Gretzky's longtime teammate partner, Jari Kurri, was now a King. Thomas Sandstrom missed 45 games due to injury, but is ready for the playoffs. They also have hard-nosed Tony Granato, a reliable Mike Donnelly, 16-year veteran and team leader Dave Taylor, and Jimmy Carson was back in a Kings uniform to help with the power play. Their defense was led by a youngster by the name of Rob Blake, along with the Mauler, Marty McSorley, while Daryl Sador and Alexei Zhitnik showed some promise. But a 5-time Cup winner and former Oiler Charlie Huddy was also now at the club, and still backstopping them in net was Kelly Hrudey. But many felt the Flames' troubles would be over, and they'd prove it. Our hero's last playoff appearance was a letdown. Last year as a whole was a letdown. Let's see what he can do here, as the Flames are without Sergei Makarov for the remainder of the season. Game 1, the Saddledome fans are ready for playoff hockey after a 1-year hiatus. It was tied at 1 early in the second period, but the Kings went on a tear and it was 4-1 after 2 period. The Kings made it 5-1. The Flames closed the gap to 5-3, but ultimately dropped the game 6-3, causing collective groans that could be heard all through the arena. Joe was a -1 and only had 1 shot. Game 2, however, a much different story. The Kings had a 1-0 lead after 1. However, the Flames made it 3-1 in the second, and then Roberts to Nieuwendyk makes it 4-1 Calgary, and it's 5-1 after 2. The Flames were leading 6-2 in the third, but this time it's Roberts and Nieuwendyk, the bestest friends in the world, who set out veteran Greg Paslowski for a goal. Oh, what is this now again, however? A power play? Nieuwendyk? Check. Al? Check. The Flurry of the Flame! It's 8-2. And the Flames take this one 9-4 and tie the series. Our hero has 3 points. Can he keep it going as the series shifts to LA? Game 3, the Forum, however, is excited as James Woods, back when he only played characters who were completely nuts, enjoys a soda with John Candy, whose only thought at this point was to get rid of the Toronto Argonauts ownership deal with Wayne and criminal Bruce McNall. However, the Flames go with Jeff Reese to start. Interesting, however, to be fair, Vernon did allow 10 goals in 2 games. And he does play well here. The Flames took a 1-0 lead late in the first period after a Joel Otto goal. But whoa, hey, we're on a power play. Reichel take the wheel, then pass it to Joe, who finds Theo Fleury for a goal. Yes, 2-0 after 1. And once again, for the second game in a row, in the second period, the Super Friends Gary and Joe once again set up Paslowski. It's 3-0 Calgary. The Kings get 1 back. It's 3-1 after 2. Time is winding down. The Flames lead 4-2 as Brian Skrudlin attempts to clear the puck, and it lands on Joe's stick. It's in the empty net. 5-2. The Flames win. Back-to-back 3-point games, 6 points in 2 games after a lackluster Game 1. Nieuwendyk is a machine as the Flames take a 2-1 series lead. Game 4, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell attend the game, arguing about whose performance was better in the comedy Overboard. In net for the Kings, however, is backup Rob Stauber, but a Trent Yanni power play marker puts the Flames up early 1-0, but then Stauber is impossible to solve. The Flames bombard him, but he's too much, surprising everyone. And Joe does a 1-8 backwards. He had no shots on goal and was contained heavily by Kings grinders. And was a -2 in a 3-1 loss. The Kings tie the series. But hey, it's not time to panic. We're headed back to Cowtown. Game 5, a complete embarrassment. The Kings lead 3-0 after 1 and 5-0 during the second, but on a power play, our hero strikes to break the shutout, and they trail 5-2. The Flames close the gap to 5-3 in the third, and the Dome was waking up a bit. Mike Vernon was back in net for the first time since Game 2, but then the Kings took a 7-3 lead. However, Nieuwendyk and Suter set up Fleury on the power play to close the gap to 7-4, but the Flames would lose 9-4 and were roasted everywhere from the media to the fans to my grandfather who never watches hockey. Game 6, we are back in LA, and yes, the Flames are on the verge of elimination, while Ronald Reagan hopes that Marty McSorley will give an old-fashioned Reagan smash to Berube. It looks good Early for the Flames, the trio of Gary, Joe, and Greg were together on a goal, the latter scoring it. The Flames draw first fire. Gretzky, however, ties it, but Roberts gives them the lead back. But the Kings score twice in a minute to end the period. It's 3-2 LA. In the second, it looks bad, 4-2. But Fleury and McInnes tied it up. But the Kings take a 6-score lead. The Flames close it to 6-5 and are one period away from elimination. It was 7-6 Kings in the third period, and the Flames had no light to try to play catch-up. A 9-6 loss. Flames, same old story, eliminated in 6 games. Joe played much better in this series than he did 2 years prior in his last playoff appearance, but the Flames were completely dropped and slammed in this series. Gary Suter was eviscerated by the media, and while Joe was far from perfect, his performances in games 2 and 3 of 3 points each is the type of thing the rest of the team should respond to. And while Fleury played well, Roberts was okay, I guess. The story is as if this is just simply 1 step up and 2 steps back. The Flames are a winning team again, they're back in the playoffs with the same playoff issues. Clearly what changes they made were not enough. The Kings went on to upset the Canucks in the next round, and then upset the Leafs in the conference final to make their first Stanley Cup final appearance in team history before losing to the Habs in the Stanley Cup finals. However, it was a huge rebound year for our hero. 38 goals, 37 assists for 75 points in 79 games. He is once again a force on the ice. And while still clicking with Makarov, he played a lot more with Fleury on his wing this year, and the two worked together to produce 30 goals, as Fleury was a co-leader in assisting on 14 goals and receiving 8 helpers on his goals from Joe. And then they teamed up on setting up goals with each other 8 times. Gary Suter yet again contributed huge to Theo's year, as did Gary Roberts, who was set up 8 times by his pal despite missing 26 games. He also clicked well with Roger Johansson as well as Al McInnes, who had a rough year missing 34 games. Joe's contributions this year weren't just about him returning to form as we've seen him in the past. He held the team together during yet another injury-plagued year. McInnes and Makarov and Roberts missed a combined 73 games. It was up to a player like Joe to try to be the glue to hold things together, especially as team captain. And he did just that to his credit. Despite the Flames continuing to have trouble in the playoffs, his asset to this club was once again emphasized this season. The Flames were a giant question mark going into the 1993-94 season, but our hero was still one of the best all-around players in the league. While he wasn't considered for many individual accolades, which many felt was a crime, it was understood in Calgary he was a bona fide hero and a star. But again, the Flames aren't making too many impactful changes to try to get this team moving further along. Their draft pick in the first round of 1993 was Jesper Mattsson. He would never play a single game, while they passed up on Saku Koivu and Todd Bertuzzi, who would each play over 1,100 NHL games in their respective careers. But, I mean, things weren't all bleak. The Flames still had one of the best lineups in the league. Apart from Nieuwendyk, they still had Theo Fleury, who'd also become a bona fide superstar himself. Gary Roberts, despite injury, plays with heart, skill, and toughness. Czech import Robert Reichel had really come into his own, and they've added German Titov to give the roster more depth and 20 or so more goals. Hopefully, two-way forward and 8-time 20-plus goal scorer Kelly Kizio will also lend some contributions. Trent Yanni was emerging as a really good defenseman that gave more support to Suter and McInnes. And despite his playoff issues, Mike Vernon is still an elite netminder. They would part ways, however, with Craig Berube and failed to protect playoff grinding specialist Brian Skrudland in the expansion draft as the Panthers and Ducks entered the league, with Skrudland going to the former. But the big loss this offseason was Sergei Makarov, who ended up in San Jose. Also, the Campbell Conference was now known as the Western Conference, and the playoff seeding became 1st to 8th place in the entire conference, a format that lasted many years. The Pacific Division, which now the Flames were a part of, still housed their heated rivals Edmonton, Vancouver, and LA, as well as the Sharks and the expansion Ducks. So let's see how things will pan out this season for our hero and the Flames. And Joe, once again, got out to a good start, as did Calgary. 9 goals, 6 assists for 15 points in 13 games to kick things off, including a goal and an assist in the season opener against the Islanders. The goal was the game-winning goal in a tight 2-1 win. He also had the same in an 8-4 win over the Kings. In the very next game, Joe's clutch heroics were on display once again against the expansion Ducks. Down 2-0, he scored both goals, including one with 19 seconds to play to preserve a 2-2 tie. And then in the game after that, another goal and a helper each. Yes, a win over the lowly Oilers, 6 points in 3 games. November continued to look good for our hero. 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points, 10 games, and was a +5. He missed 3 games due to injury, but he had 2 goals in a loss to Boston on the road, but had a huge 3-point night with a goal and 2 helpers against the powerful Leafs club. And our hero was red hot and just playing some of the best hockey of his career. 10 goals, 8 assists for 18 points in 14 games with a huge +8 in December. On the 4th, 2 goals, an assist for 3 points against an up-and-coming Flyers team. But then came another monster outing against rival Vancouver, who were struggling somewhat this season. The Flames fell behind 1-0 early, but an individual power play effort tied the game, but the Flames again fell behind 3-1. Then Joe kept them in the hunt, closing the gap to 3-2. Otto tied it up, and on the power play, Joe strikes again. We're tied 3-3, and that was only the first period, as our hero has a hat trick. He assisted on a Gary Roberts goal to give the Flames a 4-3 lead, and they never looked back. They led 7-4, and Joe gets his second assist and 5th point of the game, setting up Sandy McCarthy, and the Flames win 8-4. He was named first star of the game, and the Flames let him know they still believe in him. And to top the month off, despite the Flames having a few struggles, a goal and 2 assists for 3 points over, again, a pathetic Oilers club. In January, he was playing outstanding hockey, and he was having one of the best years of his career, it seemed. The Flames were having trouble finding consistency, however, but Joe had 15 points in 12 games, with 3 points, a goal, and 2 assists in a 10-0 thrashing of the Sad Sack Senators. In the very next game, 2 goals against an improving Sharks club in a loss, and they got back on winning track after that with another win over the Canucks, as Joe had a goal and a helper each, 7 points in 3 straight games, and even some talk of award status was emerging in the Calgary media. Yes, and indeed it was surrounding Mr. Nieuwendyk. So much so that the same month, Joe was selected to play in his 4th NHL All-Star game, and his first since 1990. Al MacInnis, with his 6th selection, joined him. Nieuwendyk actually assisted on the first goal of the game, but the Western Conference would lose a nail-biter 9-8. Joe just kept on rolling, 11 points in 11 games that he would have in February, and the Flames were as hot as their name might suggest. And going into a February 24th game at home against veteran All-Star Denis Savard and the Tampa Bay Lightning, the talk of Joe's season had been really making quite a few headlines in the hockey media. He had an excellent 72 points in 59 games, but in a sad turn of events, Joe tore some ligaments in his knee, and his chances to be up for any awards seemed to be derailed. Our hero had improved in many facets of his game. He was solid on the check throughout his career, but it was showing more and more. He was key in face-off wins in the opposing zone. He was more complete than ever in this point in his career, and it was just suddenly taken away. If that was enough, more changed in Calgary. Gary Suter, who was in his 9th season with the club, which was filled with injuries, was traded to Hartford and subsequently sent to Chicago the same day, where he spent 5 seasons, and in the midst of all the hoopla, the Flames obtained James Patrick, a very underrated, talented veteran defenseman, as well as another blue liner, Zeli Zalapski, and center Michael Nylander. The move again caused more criticism directed at Risebrough. Yes, we need change, but is this really it? But be that as it may, the Flames went 8-6-3 in the 17 games Joe would miss, bringing his overall season total to missing 20 games. He did return on April 8th against the San Jose Sharks and played the final 4 games of the season, where he notched 3 assists. The Flames overall had a really good year despite several injuries and changes. They finished 42-29-13 for 97 points, dominated the Pacific Division, winning it 12 points ahead of the Canucks. And with Joe back, can they overcome their playoff woes at last? Well, we will see, as now, once again, it's playoff time! The Flames had the second best record in the Western Conference, and would therefore face the 7-seeded team with the new playoff format, and as luck would have it, it was their old rivals, the Vancouver Canucks. The Flames had not faced in the postseason since that classic 1989 7-game series in the opening round. The Canucks were one of the NHL's biggest letdowns this year. After winning the Smythe Division 2 years in a row, they finished 41-40-3 for simply 85 points, 16 less than the year prior. But the Canucks still had one of the most gifted and talented forwards in the entire league that era, with Pavel Bure, who amassed 60 goals. They had other talented forwards on the team, such as team captain Trevor Linden, Jeff Courtnall, and a little wonder known as Cliff Ronning. But it seemed other than Bure, nobody could stay consistent. But they had reliable hard workers such as Sergio Memesso, Greg Adams, Murray Craven, and playoff experience Martin Jelena. On defense, they had the same consistency issues. It was a decent core with Jyrki Lume, Yuri Slager, Dana Murzin, and veteran all-star Dave Babich, and a huge late-season acquisition, however, in all-star Jeff Brown. In net, you had Kirk McLean, who, despite being one of the best in the league, had a good, yet somewhat letdown of a year overall compared to his previous 2. They were coached by their GM, Pat Quinn. The Canucks were seen as a lost cause whose opportunity had passed them by. The Flames won the season series, 4 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie. So our hero, who had a great year in the 64 games he played, can show furthermore why he's one of the best. Game 1 at the Saddledome in Calgary, and it's the same old story we've ever seen. The Flames are humiliated badly. Kirk McLean is incredible in net. Joe does not even register a shot on goal, however. A monster team effort for the Canucks in a 5-0 nothing win they. Game 2, however, yep, it's a different story. Yep, our hero plays a monster game as Al and Reichel set him up for a goal to open the scoring. And with the Flames leading 3-1, Titov to Nieuwendyk to Al McInnes, 4-1 Flames after 1. The Canucks cut the game in half on a shorthanded goal, but then on an extra man advantage, Fleury, yep, Al, Joe Nieuwendyk, yes, it's a goal. 5-2 Flames en route to a 7-5 win and tie the series. 2 goals, an assist for 3 points for Mr. Nieuwendyk. Game 3, we ship to Vancouver, and the towel-waving faithful are in full force, and it's bad news for Joe as he aggravates his knee issues and leaves the game, but the Flames still come out on top 4-2 thanks to a huge night from Gary Roberts, and Vernon gets it together in net. The Flames lead this series 2-1. Game 4, Nieuwendyk does not suit up, which is cause for concern. Also, Joel Otto is out for the series. But it was an exciting 3-2 win for the Flames thanks to Vernon, producing one of the best playoff outings in years. My God, Calgary is 1 win away from winning their first playoff series since they won the Cup in 1989, and we're going back to Calgary, and this is the loudest the Flames faithful have been for a playoff game probably since the 89 finals. They are ready to see this team shake the monkey out their back in Game 5. Bure strikes early for the Canucks, but our hero, who is back in action just 1 on 5 later, along with Roberts, sets up Titov. It's 1-1, and that's how it would stay through regulation as Vancouver's checking core has come to life, and Vernon has again tremendous in net. We go to overtime, so here we go. Who's going to be the hero? Roberts? Titov? Theo? Al? Maybe even Kevin Dahl? Maybe our hero will be the hero, and the hero is Jeff Courtnall. The Canucks silence the Saddle Dome. But hey, things happen in overtime sometimes. The Flames are still in the driver's seat. They won both games on the road so far this series. Game 6, we are back on the road in Vancouver. It's a tightly contested game as it's 1-1 at the end of the first. But the Canucks lead 2-1 after 2. But early in the third, Wes Walls ties up for Calgary as time winds down. It's overtime again. The Flames defense and grinders are doing their job, and Vernon makes a save when he has to. But he has a lot of breathing room. McLean is facing a bit more pressure, but the Flames can sense it. They can feel it as the first OT winds down. Wes Walls, who tied the game, serves a 2-minute on the ice penalty. Trevor Linden scores. What the we are on to Game 7. What the hell is happening here? Okay, breathe. All right, come on, Joe. Get your boys through this one. Okay, so Game 7 at the Dome. The fans still have faith in our hero. Bad knee and all is gritting through the pain. But it's not looking good. The Canucks are outplaying the Flames and lead 2-1 after 1. But the Flames strike back in the second, getting their game together, taking a 3-2 lead. For a period, the Flames are clinging to that 1-goal lead. Time is running down. Under 5 minutes to play. The Flames have the lead. They're playing great defensive hockey to protect the lead, but McLean isn't letting them build on it. And with 3:37 to go, the Canucks tie it. If you were silent for a second, you could hear the collective groans and head banging from the frustrated Flames fans. Overtime is once again exciting. More exciting than the prior 2 games. Flames have great chances, but McLean is sharp. Vernon is holding up his end too. And time winds down. The first overtime is over. Hey, perhaps this is a sign. Perhaps this is encouraging that the Flames got through it and can strategize for the second OT. And perhaps Pavel Bure will score a goal. 2:20 in the second OT, ending the Flames season. Our hero played great in Game 2, but after his injury problems emerged, causing him to miss most of Game 3 and all of Game 4, he was not the same when he came back, and it showed. He tried with all his might, but the Flames as a whole just cannot get the job done once again. To be fair, the Canucks were a lot better than their record suggested, but there's hardly an excuse for blowing a 3-1 series lead no matter who it's against, which means more changes coming. We will give General Manager Doug Risebrough credit for not wasting time with changes this year, but will he finally start making some that work? James Patrick, who he sacrificed Gary Suter for, was barely a factor in this series. Certainly Zalapsky on their hand played pretty good actually in this series next to Al McInnes, who also played well. But the Flames yet again lose to a team they were better than in the regular season in the first round. The Canucks went on to shock an up-and-coming Dallas Stars club in 5 games and pulled another huge upset, beating the Maple Leafs in 5 games to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals for the second time in their history. And they went to 7 games before losing to the New York Rangers in what has been called one of the greatest Cup Final series of all time. Joe had 36 goals and 39 assists for 75 points in just 64 games. A fantastic year for our hero despite his injury obstacles. But once again, the usual suspects are at the forefront. Al McInnes, who has been key in Joe's whole career, set up 11 goals for him, and 19 different players set up Nieuwendyk for a goal. Out of his 39 assists, just over a quarter of them went to Gary Roberts, meaning he actually set up nearly a quarter of Roberts' 41 goals. They would also team up for 8 assists, as Joe spread the wealth again in this category, teaming up with 19 different players to assist on goals. Joe had great chemistry with such teammates as Ronnie Stern, Wes Walls, German Titov, and Robert Reichel. He did work a bit of magic with Fleury once again, but the wingers were shuffled a lot this season. and it wasn't what we're used to seeing with those two. Once again, Joe keeps proving he's among the elite. Here's a guy who still has those masterful puck control skills and nifty shot that scores him a lot of goals. His defensive game, while always good, was in top form, but still wasn't actually getting a lot of love from those voters on the Selke Trophy. But be that as it may, 75 points in 64 games makes you wonder what might have been if he played the full season, or at least close to it. He's a plus 19, still a force on the power play and in the clutch. He was also the Molson Cup winner for the Flames with the most 3-star selection points at the end of the year for the second time, and played in his 4th NHL All-Star game, but yet another playoff disappointment lingered on, which meant even bigger changes had to be coming. Going into the 1994-95 season, the Flames weren't the only thing shrouded in uncertainty as the entire league was, as a league-wide lockout threatened the entire season. However, in January, an agreement was reached and we would be treated to a 48-game season where teams would only play opponents in the same conference as them. And our hero, Joe Nieuwendyk, was about to enter his 8th full season in the NHL and remain as team captain for the Calgary Flames, but the team had made 2 monster changes. Mike Vernon, who had been the team's starting goaltender since the '86 Stanley Cup playoffs, was finished in Calgary. He was traded to the Detroit Red Wings for defenseman Steve Chiasson, who was one of the more underrated blue liners in the league. Apparently the management was sick of Vernon not really performing well in the playoffs as he should. And as for goaltending, the Flames were putting their trust in Trevor Kidd, who did have a good rookie season the previous year. And if that wasn't big enough, this was even bigger. Al MacInnis, the man who Calgary's success in the late 80s was built on the back of, and had become one of the best defensemen in the league and an icon in the town, was significant in developing our hero into what he had become as one of the league's elite forwards, was looking for a change in his career, and he found it. He was traded to the St. Louis Blues for another all-star defenseman, Phil Housley. Now, to be fair to Phil, he may not have been as good as Al, but was excellent in his own right, and had spent many years on mediocre and below-average clubs. He still had a lot to offer, but Calgary fans were angry at this one and lashed out at Al himself for wanting out. It was a media circus with both MacInnis and Vernon gone, as Joe was now one of the few elements remaining from that glorious club in 1989. But to be fair to Doug Riseborough, who may not have been a great GM at the end of the day, but when in 5 years after winning the Cup, you have 4 of those years as a playoff club with 90-plus points, and you can't win an opening round series, changes do have to be made, and he had to make them. Whether they were good or not is another story, but it wasn't coming together. With Housley, Chiasson, Zalapsky, and Patrick on defense, maybe this could be a new era for Calgary Blue Line, and up front a new era for Joe, Fleury, and Roberts, who again were all left over from '89, among some others. Joe had lost many line mates over the years, but now he lost one of the best setup men he ever had in Al MacInnis. Let's see how this plays out. And oh yeah, Calgary got new uniforms. The days where every team in professional sports tried to live in the 90s, man, when even then we knew most of them were eyesores. But I will say the Flames ones weren't overly bad, but still, don't fix it if it ain't broke. Anyway, the season began in late January, and from that point into early February, Joe had 6 goals, 11 assists for 17 points in 19 games. He had a 3-point night with a goal and 2 helpers, as he gave a rude welcome back to former teammate Al MacInnis and the Blues. Calgary fans weren't exactly over-receptive to Al, as he also did the same thing in an exciting outing with the Dallas Stars on February 18th at home and assisted on Fleury's big OT winner. And the Flames looked pretty good to start this short season, but some very bad news. Gary Roberts, Joe's longtime linemate and good friend, has career-threatening neck, spine, and nerve issues and will be out for this season, and his career is now in question. In March, our hero continues to produce with 7 goals, 10 assists for 17 points in 15 games. The Flames may have a little bit of consistency issues, but our hero stood out with 2 goals and a helper against Chris Chelios and the Hawks, and a goal and 2 assists 10 days later, March 17th against Teemu Selanne and a struggling Winnipeg Jets club. The final month of the season is where Joe saved his best, 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points in 16 games, and a huge +8. And the Flames were looking excellent. Our hero began the month with a huge 5-game point streak, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points, averaging 2 points a game, a goal and a win over Chicago, 2 helpers, a win against Gretzky and a sad-looking Kings squad, 2 assists in a loss to the Canucks, and his 10th career hat trick, and a dominant win over the Sharks, and a goal, an assist, and another win against the Kings, as the Flames went to go 4-1-0 on this stretch. But Joe wasn't done yet. He had a goal and 3 helpers against the Kings. It was a +5, 2 goals including the game winner on the road against the Sharks on April 25th. But again, Joe's injury woes came back to haunt him at season's end. His playoff prognosis looked bad. The Flames did indeed make the playoffs with a record of 24-17-7 for 55 points, winning the Pacific Division for the 2nd straight year, meaning once again they were the 2nd-seeded team in the Western Conference. They'll face the 7th seed as now it's playoff time. Awaiting the Flames was the 7th-seeded Sharks, San Jose Sharks that is, who finished with 42 points in their 4th year of existence. Their first 2 years in the league, they were a laughingstock, even for an expansion club, but changes in their 3rd season made them into a playoff club, and they pulled off a shocking upset over the Red Wings last year, and now they face the Flames. The Sharks were a team full of veteran character players and young talent, and they were coached by Kevin Constantine. They were led by Soviet superstar duo Igor Larionov and, of course, former Flame star Sergei Makarov. They also had veteran Ulf Dallin, who was always a reliable 20-goal scorer. And they had smartly acquired Craig Janney from the St. Louis Blues, who's one of the best assist men in the game at this point. In addition to them, they had Pat Falloon, as well as youngsters Jeff Friesen and Ray Whitney, as well as the toughness of Jeff Odgers. Their blue line core was led by young prospect Sandy Zozelinch, joined by Tom Peterson, Mike Rathke, and Jim Kite. But their biggest asset was a net, Latvian sensation Arturs Urbe. Here we go, Game 1, and our hero does not suit up, but the Saddledome is in a group prayer hoping this year will be different. But Game 1 isn't, as yet again the Flames lose the opening game to a series. Despite Paul Cruz scoring early, the Sharks led 3-1 after 1, the Flames trailed 5-2 after 2, closed the gap, but it wasn't enough, a 5-4 loss. Game 2, Joe is still out of action. The Flames did lead 2-1 after 1, but trailed 3-2 after 2. The Sharks lead 4-3 and were about to take a big series lead heading home, but Reichel tied it with 47 seconds left, only for them to lose in overtime. Here we go again. Flames now trail 2-0 to a team who had a losing record as they head to San Jose. Game 3, our hero is back, and the pressure is on him to produce something significant. He wasted no time ever. 43 seconds in, Chason feeds him and sets up Paul Cruz to take a 1-0 lead. The Flames lead 4-1 after 1. Leading 5-1 in the second period, it's Mike Sullivan to Theo to Nieuwendyk. 6-1 Flames. The Flames were in firm control in the 3rd period, leading 7-2 when it's Fleury to Titov. Joe, his 2nd goal of the game, a 3-point night, a huge 9-2 win, and they're still in this thing. Also, Fleury has been playing brilliantly. Game 4, Calgary led 1-0 after 1, and early in the second period, Joe to Phil, and Fleury scores his 2nd of the game on the way to a huge night for him. With 4 goals and a helper, the Flames take it 6-4. This series is tied. Crisis averted. We are going back to Calgary. With Fleury red hot and Joe back in action, things were looking good. Game 5, the Flames faithful were psyched, confidence reinstilled in their boys. And then again, Game 5, things looked amazing. It's a power play. It's Kelly Kisio to, you guessed it, Joe Nieuwendyk. It's a goal. Fans are in a frenzy, 1-0, and 3-0 after another 2 goals from fiery Fleury. Trevor Kidd is superb in net in this game, as is the Flames defense. In the 3rd period, they add 2 more and take this one 5-0, and are on the verge of finishing off this thing, taking a 3-2 series lead. It looks like it is written that it shall be done. The Flames will end their slump as the Sharks receive terrible news. Urbe is hurt and will miss the rest of the series. Back to the Shark Tank for Game 6. The Flames are trying to expose goaltender Wade Fleury, but he's actually playing pretty well. Be that as it may, however, the Flames still lead 2-1 after 1. Flaherty stays strong, however, in period 2, and the Sharks respond and lead 4-2 after 2. Trevor Kidd is being taken apart. The Flames lost. Our hero does not play well, and indeed, the Sharks take it 5-3 and force a 7th game. Oh dear, as we hit Game 7 in Calgary, there's a mix of excitement and dread in the crowd. Our hero will likely be called upon to up his game. It looks bad. Trevor Kidd isn't even facing much pressure, and the Sharks led 2-0 in the second. You hear a pin drop in the Saddledome, but it's the tag team of Joe and Theo setting up Cruz for a goal with 41 seconds left to play. In the second period, the Flames trail 2-1. The Dome wakes up a bit. The momentum is killed as the Sharks take a 3-1 lead 19 seconds into the 3rd, and lead 4-2 as time is on the Flames side, and Flaherty is amazing in net. In a game that only had 2 penalties and a lot of disciplined hockey in the first 2 periods, Jamie Baker of the Sharks makes a grave error to delay a game penalty. The Flames need one bad. So, of course, on the power play, our hero needs to take hold of the ship, and Phil Housley does a great job anchoring the play. He gets to Nylander, and Joe Nieuwendyk scores! The Flames have life again, and the Dome wakes up. The Flames love a chance. 42 seconds later, Titov scores. The Dome erupts and is shaken to its foundation. We're tied 4-4. This will be such an epic way for Joe Nieuwendyk and the Calgary Flames to shake this monkey out their backs at long last. So we're off to OT. The Flames are really pressuring Flaherty, but he's a wall. Kidd is not facing much action as the defense is doing their thing. Their first OT winds down. We're off to double OT. Excitement is in the air. So to hell with it. You know how this ends. Ray Whitney scores 154 into the second overtime. Season over. Yep. The Flames in their last 5 appearances in the playoffs lose in the first round, lose to teams that are significantly better than. This team is clearly going nowhere. Joe Nieuwendyk missed the first 2 games and returned with a vengeance, but also had a rough outing in Game 6 and did his best in Game 7, but yet again, it didn't matter. The Sharks, however, would get swept by the Red Wings in the next round. And little did we know at the time, but that 7th game against the Sharks would be the last time Joe Nieuwendyk would play for the Calgary Flames. Joe had 21 goals and 29 assists for 50 points in 46 games this season, another excellent year. And Phil Housley took over McInnes' role as setting up rushes just fine when it came to our hero being on the ice, as Housley's 7 assists to Joe meant a third of our hero's goals came from Philly boy. Once again, Nieuwendyk and Fleury were a force to be reckoned with, teaming up with 18 goals one way or another. Joe set him up 9 times, almost a third of Theo's 29 goals. And he and Housley teamed up to collaborate for 8 assists. Oh, what might have been in the future of this, but this organization became their own worst enemy. Joe again was at the top of his game despite knee issues, which he managed to avoid most of the time this season, but sadly came at the worst time towards the end and into the playoffs. He was playing at a high level. In addition to averaging a point a game for the 6th time in 8 seasons, he finished a plus 11, and was for the first time in his career actually got end-of-season Team All-Star votes, coming in 6th. And to top that off, he was the NHL's recipient of the King Clancy Award, award to the player that best exemplifies leadership on and off the ice, and in recognition of humanitarian work in the community, as he was heavily involved in every Flames-associated charity organization, both during the season and off-season. A well-deserved honor. So, of course, a lot of you are wondering, why exactly is Joe's time in Calgary up? Some of you are probably all, well, it's obvious, he's merely a free agent and wants a change. Well, no, he wasn't a free agent, and he really didn't have much desire to leave Calgary. You also may think, oh, well, Riseborough wants to get rid of him. He's the captain and the team isn't progressing, time for a change. On the contrary, the Flames organization, especially Riseborough, did not want to part ways with Joe whatsoever, feeling that, along with Fleury, he's still their top asset. But either way, after 8 full seasons, Joe Nieuwendyk's journey in Calgary comes to an end. He won the biggest prize of them all, the Stanley Cup, and was a huge part of that team finally coming together, helped guide them to the best record in the NHL twice, won the Calder Trophy as the league's top Rookie of the Year, and was of course named to the All-Rookie team, led the league in both power play and game-winning goals 1 time each, played in 4 NHL All-Star games, represented Team Canada at the 1990 Worlds, 2 Molson Cups, as the Flames tops in points for end of Game 3 star selections, and the Clancy Trophy for his class, leadership, and humanitarian work. 2 50-goal seasons, 2 more 40-goal seasons, and averaged a point a game 6 out of 8 seasons. Joe truly was among the top of the NHL after these 8 seasons. Joe's time with the Flames ended with 314 goals, 302 assists for 616 points in 577 games. It was over a plus 135 during that time. A great clutch player and a marvel on the power play during his time there. When he left the team, he was their all-time goal-scoring leader, and as of 2023, currently is 3rd all-time for the franchise. In terms of points, he was their 2nd all-time points leader when he left, only behind former teammate Al MacInnis, and currently sits at 4th as of 2023. But that does it for our look at Joe Nieuwendyk in Calgary, as his journey is about to take us from the Great White North of Canada to the Deep South United States. And we'll tell you just how that happened in part 3 of our series. Until next time, I'll see ya!